Well, Red, what are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about Absolute Wonder Woman issue 2, which continues this story of a new Wonder Woman who grew up in hell, taught by her adopted mother how to discover she is an Amazon and fights demons on what we assume is Earth. There are creatures currently attacking a city. This Wonder Woman shows up to save the day. And in this issue, we are introduced once again to this world's Steve Trevor and his place in the military, and get a little bit of backstory on how they met in hell, where she once rescued him from a huge octopus creature in the deep, just to find him here standing on the shore, fighting alongside her against these demons and the US military.
Yeah, so I'd like to pose a question regarding how we're approaching these absolute stories. And the question is this. The whole point of them is to take a familiar character and do something different with them. And so if we're going to interact with these stories at all, we have to be open to some things being different. However, as we have pushed against in other reviews with Absolute Superman and Batman, there's clearly a line of, or lines of where we think if you go this far, it's not Superman. Or if you go this far, it's not Batman. And so the question I've got is, when you have a character who is, from day one, was the feminist superheroine, right? And she was meant to be about women's girl power. It was always the case. Girl strong and men weak. Really, that's it's from the golden age. It's pretty much every version of Wonder Woman. When you have that kind of female empowerment superheroine who has these kind of Grecian mythological roots to her, that question it comes up again. What is an acceptable way to tell a Wonder Woman story? What are the things that you can change? What are the things that you can change and it's still her? What are the things that have to stay the same about her in order for it to be Wonder Woman? What are the elements of a essential Wonder Woman character and an essential Wonder Woman story? And I think, like I said, we've kind of been playing around with those questions with both Superman and Batman. But with Wonder Woman, like I said, those questions are going to play out a little differently because of what she was meant to do as a character. Because like if we're pushing against, well, I don't like, the fact that the men are weak in this story. I mean, that's, we're not just pushing against absolute Wonder Woman at that point. We're pushing against Wonder Woman in totality.
Yeah.
That's kind of the thing I've been trying to get around. So like, what do you guys think about that?
I was particularly fascinated by this particular issue because my sense of Wonder Woman through snippets that I've read and stuff that I've seen from the TV show from the 70s and stuff, or the 80s, and stuff I've seen from the recent movies, I've seen a couple of those movies, is that this is starting to feel like what I understand to be canon. At least it feel like maybe the details are different, but this is starting to I feel like it's circling the heart of what Wonder Woman canonically is supposed to be and do.
What is that heart for you? How would you describe that, just briefly?
So this is where it gets really interesting, because I'm talking as an outsider who's interested in understanding it the way people who have grown up with the DC comics understand it, but I'm not there yet. But my sense of it is that there's an aspect that has to be like Superman. There's an aspect that has to show up and save the day and maybe not be appreciated for what she's doing, but always maintains composure in the face of whether or not she's being appreciated for what she's doing. She's a deity, right? And she's going to serve and protect no matter what. And I got that sense in this issue. And then, but that's always paired with this like feminine, this cute, naive, feminine infatuation with this one random military guy, which is that kind of juxtaposition, that tension of a goddess who has this naive wonder with is it Steve Rogers? Am I
Steve Trevor.
see just so people know, please don't clip that, Will Red. Just so people know, like I'm demonstrating my bona fides of just how well I understand this stuff by confusing Captain American's name with
They look
Captain
similar
American.
depending on how
Yeah.
they're. If you see them both in their civilian
there,
uniforms,
right? Yeah, like just falling in love with the guy next door kind of factor. I think that my sense is that that's always been that's a core archetype that has to, you want to see that bell being rung for Wonder Woman to be Wonder Woman. And curiously, we didn't get a lot. I think all of us were pretty confused in the first two issues. By issue 3, for some reason, it seems like those core features are emerging. Or am I completely off base? Am I misreading what Wonder Woman is supposed to be? Is this issue actually hitting those key features? Are there other features that I'm just not tracking at all that should be here and aren't, or maybe are here and I didn't pick up on?
Let's take a brief pause to hear from the awesome creators joining us today and find out what cool projects they're currently working on.
Hey guys, if you love sword and sandal historical fiction with a healthy dose of ancient Roman and Egyptian fantasy mixed in, then check out Kyrie. We've got 450 pages printed so far, and a 4th book on the way. Order your books today at curiecomic.com.
Modern day, classic superhero storytelling. Get The Adventures of Omega Girl, issues 1 through 5, now on Indie Planet.
Thank you to our awesome creators, and now back to the video.
So my take on all of that is the way we argue whether or not Batman, absolute Batman, is Batman enough and absolute Batman is Superman enough, is we want to understand if it's just a gimmick and that there's actually absolutely nothing about these characters that is referential or representing those original incarnations and attempting to reimagine them in different settings. My argument with Absolute Wonder Woman is not simply that it isn't actually Wonder Woman. I'm not sure she's actually a feminist, quite frankly. It doesn't just end with the interesting attraction that she has with Steve Trevor. In the original series, there was also bondage, for example, in the early incarnations. There were a lot of efforts to try to humanize her and to de-escalate her status as a goddess, to make her as womanly as possible,
Well,
as she occupied this position where she was able to perform all of the same feats that the men do in this superheroic fashion. That is the way that she was a feminist icon. This one has all of the trappings, all the window dressing of these feminist references, whether or not she's, she comes from a coven, these things that are supposed to free women apparently from their domesticated histories and retell their stories in a way that is supposed to be liberating. This one is literal in that sense. And so since it loses the frame of reference, it loses the entire point of why that exists. And then it is no longer feminist. It is just an aesthetic, which is really what most of these books are, is just aesthetic.
Yeah.
And this character suffers that exact same conclusion, that exact same trap, where everything about her, including what's supposedly feminist, is just aesthetic.
I'm gonna push back against that a bit. I would say that Wonder Woman's she had fascinating history. She's gone through different versions where she's been literally like child of Zeus, demigod, and there have been versions where she's simply just like a clay doll that got turned into. She's just another a Greek reference to having a child made out of clay turned into a human. It's a Pinocchio practically. And so the things that I see that I think are consistent, the fact that she is very strong and that she has a positive attitude towards life in opposition to the men who essentially want to kind of put her down. The fact that
that's core, right? Yeah,
that is core. The fact that she has a more, and this is weird actually. They show her. There's a lot of promo artwork that's leaning into. Surprising no one, the cover of the comic is actually pushing against a little bit what's going on in the story. It's a very long history of that happening in comics, of having something different on the cover. The cover is implying that she's more violent than she actually is. So the cover implies that she's going to be swinging around this big old phallic sword and she's going to be chopping things in pieces the whole time. When she fights, the demon, the harbinger, at the beginning here, she ends up using her lasso, and she ends up using it to essentially kind of almost she's threatening the demon, but she doesn't just like chop him in half. She's not Thor, and she's not trying to be like the New 52 Wonder Woman who was just chopping things apart with her sword. She basically negotiates with him, and she says, "Okay, demon, you're gonna go away. I'm gonna set you free from the lasso." And these are also core aspects of original Wonder Woman, which was the fact that she was always someone who was willing and very eager to take different avenues to resolve conflicts. So very core Wonder Woman is doing this move of offering a different pathway and oftentimes resolving conflicts in ways that are slightly different than usual superheroes. She still does the fisticuffs. She still uses violence. She's not like, a hippie or anything, but there was always that door open where I'm like, I've got the lasso, not the sword. And the lasso is this opportunity through kinky, sexy bondage, right? To find an alternative way to resolve conflicts, as opposed to just being me beat you up and that's the end of story. And I was actually surprised her interactions with the general, because they portray the general as kind of a, just brutish guy who's just yelling at her. Yeah. But there was a version of DC Comics that would have seen Wonder Woman just belting that general across the face and having everyone in the audience cheer. I can think of some panels where something similar to that has happened in recent memory. And to her credit, Kelly Thompson threaded the needle a little bit and she's talking to Trevor and she says, "Hey, I know I'm not going to be appreciated. I'm not naive about this situation. I'm going to handle this the best I can." And she tries to negotiate with the military guy a little bit. She says, she puts her foot down. "Hey, I'm kind of a demigoddess. I'm super powerful. You need me and I don't have to answer to you, but I'm not going to rub your face too far into that. I'm going to try and she doesn't just completely emasculate the guy, which other comics would have done. They would have had her slam that guy's head into a table or something. And she tries to kind of she says, "Hey, let's just end this conversation before we say things." she ends the conversation before it would hit that point. And these are all.
And the illustrator actually, whose name is escaping me right now, he draws her in a softened expression. He's got a very feminine style that he doesn't let up on in that particular scene, which softens that scene even more. It demonstrates her as just kind of impassively threading that needle, standing resolute and confident, but not meeting the general with a girl boss kind of attitude. There's something kind of ascendant about her where she's like, I literally don't have to prove myself, and because of that, I'm going to continue to be kind in this situation, which I think is really interesting. I assumed that was part of Wonder Woman's core, features. It would make sense whether she's from hell or from somewhere else. What do you guys think?
Well, so the core feature
Hayden Sherman, by the way, is the artist. Apologies to Hayden. I know you're listening.
The core feature that makes her absent of the feminist dynamic that's supposed to be present in the character is that she's looking for, in the original incarnation of Wonder Woman, she's looking for a place of belonging. She's among the people and she's attracted to a human male. She's looking for her place in that society. She engages with them as an equal. and she wants to be viewed as an equal and viewed for appreciated for her capabilities and what she can actually achieve without any kind of degradation or discrimination for societal, class, gender kind of prejudices that might exist. This character in no way is part of the society. She's totally alien to everything occurring here, and the interactions are completely artificial. She walks in and she's lived her entire life in hell, and she's engaging with this general, and she's talking about the military industrial complex. She's already on her soapbox, giving her CNN talking points.
I knew you weren't going to like that line.
Well, and it's so artificial and forced.
Yeah. How
And
did she get there from growing up in hell, knowing Cersei is the only other being, and then and she can have this like scathing, the incisive.
She implied. I think that might be, like I said, that was
There's a time delay.
She's not a part of this society is the point that I'm getting at. And so because of that, she doesn't embody any of the struggles of the society or the woman in it. She can't embody any of the feminist efforts that were.
She was always an outsider. When she's from Paradise Island, she's spent a huge part of her, that part tracks with every version of Wonder Woman we've ever gotten, which is she spends most of her young adult life completely separated from man's world, and then she has to at some point enter into it. Now in this version, she has a little more awareness than she usually has of our political conversations, and that's eye rolling, I guess. But you could probably hand wave it with maybe Cersei has a magic mirror and she can watch American television. I don't know, that's not been revealed to us, but it does track that she is always been an outsider who comes into man's world and conflicts with it on some level. Like that tracks with every version we've ever got.
She isn't as much of an outsider in the original book as she is here. Here she's completely alien. And she's having these adversarial conversations of, you need to respect my contributions here and my place. And in the original version, she's actively dating and living among them, and then trying to enter into their engagements and trying to be part of their society. So it's a really different dynamic here, a really different circumstance. She's Superman that just fell out of the sky and then suddenly is talking from them on high. But then you are saying that this character needs to be talking to them from the perspective of somebody who lives within the society and has to deal with the struggles of the society, which would characterize more the feminist representation a little bit better. So the two don't gel. You can't call aliens part of the feminist movement. You
literally can, but
well, no,
and they do.
How are you experiencing any of the adversities that the feminists are trying to reform and change if you hadn't existed in them? You just reveal yourself one day.
Apollo swung his dick around and threw her and Cersei into hell.
I didn't even see that happening. So
like there are many, as I've been told many times, there are many different branches of feminism. Like I said, that Kelly Thompson is doing like witch feminism in this book, which is already kind of a different choice, although how it's actually executed has been a question. I think this is a step up from the first issue. The first issue, I really was worried. The second issue, I'm liking Wonder Woman as a character. I didn't hate every interaction that she had. I kind of was like, hey, this is someone I could interact with, with all her demigodness. I will say one thing that I do think is very interesting, which is the fact that where the comic started to struggle for me wasn't the portrayal of the female character. It was the portrayal of the men. There's a couple panels that I'm going to, allude to that I definitely want everyone in our audience to see. But when Hayden Sherman draws Wonder Woman, he kind of gives her these softer features, but he also kind of makes her look a little Grecian, which is kind of an interesting take to actually make her kind of have these sort of Greek features. That's an interesting take. I kind of like it. But when Sherman draws men, it comes apart. There's one hilarious panel where he just draws I posted about this on Twitter where I said that Steve Trevor didn't skip leg day. He skipped torso day because the anatomy is just completely sloppily rendered. It's a theme with him. When Steve Trevor discovers that he's in hell, he kind of like, it's weird how he's drawing the women to be, they do look like women, but there's something about it where the women look kind of like women, but strong women, and the men look really feminine.
Yeah.
So this is the most Barbie.
Wild?
It's the most Barbified version of Trevor I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And so the feminist project that Marston, engaged with when he created Wonder Woman was about, it wasn't just about the women, right? Because he puts Trevor and Wonder Woman together at the very beginning, and he has their relationship be very important. He has this demi-goddess who's way stronger, way smarter, way more powerful, way more full of inner joy and peace, almost messianic from a female perspective. And she pairs him and has her instantly fall in love with the guy who washes up on the beach. And he is noble, but he is just so much less than she is that he needs her. And that's the type of feminism that Marston was trying to push, which is the fact that the best man recognizes that he needs to be ruled over by the best woman. And that's kind of
that's canonical Wonder Woman.
That is day one. That is day one Wonder Woman. And so I think that there's some nods to that here, but the artist is going because here's the thing is that Steve Trevor was still very much the best man that could be offered. He's this military guy. He's brave. He's as strong as a guy can be. It's just not enough. And this version, he's it's subtle, but it's pretty inferred. He's kind of he's strong, but still kind of a wuss. Like that picture of him going, "I'm in hell," and he looks completely. Just that the picture, Matt, you posted about it too. Like that one image it's the picture. 1,000 words is in that particular picture, and that's where it started to fall apart for me personally.
I love how in this version of feminism, since there's so many different kinds, you can have a feminist icon who's never experienced any gender discrimination or had to be a woman in this society and understand what the struggles of feminism would.
So you're talking about a suffragette. That's
yeah. I mean, she essentially is a representation of a lot of the lore that came out of feminism. Like, I agree, there's references, there's aesthetic there, just like there's a lot of references and aesthetic to the character Wonder Woman. Having a lasso be here is kind of cute, but it subverted the entire purpose of the lasso, was to project honesty and to have people reveal their true selves. In this one, she just punishes them for their magnitude of sins, which
it's Ghost Rider's penance stare as in Rope.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Uh-huh.
Yeah. It's
this is from hell. She's from this is the Wonder Woman from hell.
Her cozy little hell where, like, her future boyfriend just washes up ashore for her. That
takes us back to, again, my initial question though. If you're going to enter into this project at all, right? If you're going to do these characters and do them differently, you have to make some choices that are different. Which choices are we going to allow these creators to change and still say it's Wonder Woman? We got to say that the lasso has to do the exact same thing it's always done, which is to be more redemptive. Like, it's supposed to be a different take. So if we do the same lasso, or if we complain about the lasso, that's kind of what I was trying to get at with my initial question. If we say, okay, sure, change the lasso, how far can you change that lasso?
When you're talking about canon, you're talking about the things that can generalize to their basic axioms, and they represent, the core characteristics of any kind of character, so that you can always identify them, no matter what kind of elseworld, ultimates, absolute, rendition that you're exploring with that character. And these ones, because they're so focused on messaging, quite frankly, they've deviated so far from all of those canonical axioms that make the character identifiable and who they are, these things that motivate Motivations. How about motivations? Let's start there. All the things that purely motivate them in the original stories or any other incarnation, the motivations are absent here. They're maybe implied. Maybe we're supposed to assume. Like, I had the question of, I don't understand why Bruce Wayne in the absolute universe is Batman. Like, what exactly is motivating him to go out and do the things that he does? Because
Yeah.
the character doesn't represent what he stands for in the original verse. And I would say the same is true here in this iteration of Wonder Woman. Why is she on this planet fighting these monsters who came from who knows where, other than, the last one was clearly a manifestation of Georgia O'Keeffe's worst nightmare. But every other thing here, I'm not seeing any kind of pathway to help me draw a connection back to where this original character, where the representation originally started from. So it's
Okay, so I think this is interesting because I know that in the past, and this is actually helpful because I know motivations are very important to you. And so no, you
go with
mentioned
the
it.
meme.
You mentioned on
Great.
no, but it's fair to bring up, and I will say that in earlier versions of all these superheroes, their mission, and this is actually something a scholar named Peter Coogan talks about. He talks about it as one of the core elements of the superhero. He says the mission, right? So that's his motivation mission. It's basically, why is the superhero doing what they're doing? And many superheroes very quickly within their first couple of appearances, Spider-Man, it's in the first issue of it. Superman, it's pretty much in the first one. I think Batman, it happens in the first 2 or 3. Going back to the Golden Age or any other incarnation, you very quickly get an establishing it gets established what that mission is, what this character is meant to do. With Wonder Woman, it was spelled out from, Queen Hippolyta, which is, you will go into the world of men and you will redeem it through your feminism,
Goodness.
essentially. Right. Yeah. You will conquer men through female love and they will all, fall in line essentially and become peaceful. But she spells it out, it's very clear. It's not very ambiguous. Batman says, I will become a bat to scare the criminal element. Superman says, I will help the oppressed.
Mm-hmm.
So what these comics are, I think, doing, and they haven't done it yet, is they're taking the long route. And like I said, I know this one is part. It's a part of a 5-part series, and so I think that as this is something we see in modern writing in comics. It's something I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of myself at times, but they're clearly doing this more cinematic television pilot or whatever approach where. The character may be in costume, but I think the mission is part of the story arc. I think that I admit I don't know what Superman's mission is yet, but I know that he'll settle on it eventually. So I'm wondering if that's part of what each of these characters. I don't know exactly what Batman's mission is yet, but I know that they're gearing up for it. So I think that some of what you may be expressing here is tied to the fact that none of these absolute comics have yet spelled out that particular thing, the mission of the superhero, which usually we get way faster than now. They're deliberately structuring it so we get it later.
All right, guys. So final thoughts. Let's do well-read first. What do you think?
It's a little aimless, and it continues to be so. I still haven't found any kind of grounding or a sense or logic, frankly, any consistency in this story. I know also the smooth brains that are listening are going to say, how dare a bunch of men debate feminism? They have no right to have an opinion or a perspective on it. I'll have my right for an opinion and perspective, and I don't need to ask permission from anybody to do that. And I can talk about any subject I wish, regardless of my gender.
You're quoting Wonder Woman. That's what she said in the comic.
Yeah, that is me asserting my feminism. Okay.
Yeah, she said, I don't need your permission, General.
I just don't see any self-consistency in this story. Hell is way too comfortable. The circumstances are way too convenient. Steve Trevor is sweeping up on the shore. Steve Trevor is showing up on the dock. Monsters are flying out of who knows where, and she's giving speeches to a bunch of generals. None of it seems to, really have any narrative or focus or structure. And it's already issue 2. We'll see how issue 3 goes.
Twitless, what did you think?
I was pleasantly surprised by this comic. I didn't think Kelly Thompson had it in her to do as well as she did. I still think the premise of the comic is not yet fully being realized. The whole Princess from Hell, which is, like I said, Wonder Woman from Hell, like is an interesting pitch. We got glimpses of it with her, penance stare, lasso. It's edgy and different, and very Amazon from Hell concept. So at least on that side of things, I think it's a little better. I still think Hell is a little too comfortable. I think it got a little worse this issue. Steve Trevor clearly wasn't liking it. But yeah, it's better than issue 1. I'm still undecided on it, but because it's better than issue 1, I feel better. Because if it had been worse than issue 1, I would definitely really not be feeling this series. So still hopeful this can turn out okay.
Thank you very much for checking out the video. Subscribe, like, and stay tuned for more.